Egypt and France have historical relations dating back to the end of the 18th century. French culture had and still has a significant impact on the Egyptian life in general, since the establishment of the state in Egypt and in modern sense, in the period after Napoleon and the era of Muhammad Ali. It was the French who opened the doors of ancient Egyptian history, helping us to read our ancient language and to reach what we know now about this Egyptian civilization. One of the most prominent of the French aid is the disappearance of the Rosetta Stone, which was found by an officer of the French campaign to Egypt. The hieroglyphic writing was disappeared in 1822. Muhammad Ali began to build modern Egypt. The Egyptian missions went to France in all fields of science and literature, from Rafa al-Tahtawi to Taha Hussein and others. We cannot deny that generations of Egyptian intellectuals were influenced by the writers and ideas of the French thinkers and writers such as Voltaire and others. One of the most important Egyptian books is The Influence of the French Civilization on the Vision of Rafa al-Tahtawi for Women, an encyclopedia of Egypt's description as a result of the French campaign. During the 18th century, Egypt made France a destination for its student missions and relied on French advisors for it wanted to establish schools, universities, or scientific bodies, or renew its life in any productive branches. During this period, the French participated in the construction of the bridges, buildings, and schools. In the military field, Muhammad Ali Pasha used French officers to establish the modern army of Egypt and to establish the modern navy. 2019 is a very special year in the history of the relations between Egypt and France, coinciding with the 150th anniversary of the opening of the Suez Canal, which is one of the great achievements in the course of bilateral relations. France's significant participation at the Cairo International Book Fair as the Golden Jubilee, held on the 2nd of January of 2019, is one of the most prominent features of the Year of Egypt. France 2019. In the Opera Big Theatre, the first performance of Paris Opera Ballet with the participation of Cairo Opera Ballet took place. In the Grand Hall, the Lafayette in France's King Tutankhamun exhibition will be held. It includes a number of gold jewels, also in carving statues and funerary furnitures. Paris is the second phase of this exhibition. Egypt sponsors this exhibition as part of the global tour between the countries of the world for the monuments and artistic pieces of the Golden Pharaohs, which are unparalleled.
President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi arrived at Orly Airport in Paris on Sunday to participate in the Paris conference to support Sudanese transition and also to attend a summit on financing African economies held on the 17th and 18th of May. French President Emmanuel Macron's invitation to President al-Sisi to take part in the summit comes in light of the close and growing ties between Egypt and France, as well as Egypt's vital role in supporting the transitional phase in the brotherly Sudan at the regional and international levels. During the summit, President al-Sisi stresses on the need that the international community joins forces to support Sudan during the important historical stage, and to shed light on the ongoing Egyptian efforts in this regard at various economic, political, and security levels. During the summit of financing African economies, Egypt will focus on various topics of concern to African countries, including the importance of enhancing international efforts to facilitate their integration into the global economy in a way that contributes to achieving economic growth amid coronavirus repercussions, as well as facilitating technology transfer to African countries. During his visit, al-Sisi will hold talks with French counterpart to discuss boosting bilateral relations, as well as continuing consultations and mutual coordination on a number of regional and international issues of mutual interest. The President will also meet a number of heads of state and government to discuss advancing the bilateral cooperations framework, as well as boosting consultations on various regional and international issues.
Right, welcome back. And as we are speaking here, the President already met the French President, and he held summit talks with him on a number of regional and international issues of mutual concerns. If we are speaking here about the Egyptian-French relations, and recently the Egyptian-French relations have seen a kind of quantum leap. we're speaking here about different levels of cooperation on different fields, political, economic, strategic, and also militarily. So how do you view them?
I will borrow the expression you mentioned, quantum leap. And I think that's a very good expression and reflection of what's actually happening. Let's take a view at few things. The opening of the new branch of the Suez Canal, and the former French president was there because France had a historic role that played, actually, the origin of the whole idea in the modern era was a French one with contribution of France that cannot be denied. The contribution of France to Egyptology and to the what's happening today, because there is also some kind of uplifting always news when it comes to the new Egyptian museum, to our monuments and so on. And France historically, and historically not today and yesterday, talking about since hundreds of years, France has been a key player when it comes to that, if not the key player among other nations. And you mentioned, and the President has just mentioned here, the military cooperation. We cannot hide away the fact of the turbulence and instability in the whole region and around Egypt from each and every side. And the strength of Egypt has to be, and the power of Egypt has always to be there and has always to be guarded. We have French aircrafts, not only the new ones we are having here, the Raval, but since the 80s we have the Mirage aeroplanes, the new ships that join the Navy. Egypt is one of very few countries. Yes, Mistral. The very few countries, Egypt is one of very few countries, 5 countries in the world has aircraft carriers, and Egypt has 2 of them. One in the Naval North Fleet, and one is the Red Sea one. So I'm showing here the kind of cooperation on a cultural level, on educational level. Several universities and institutions play an important role in Egypt, and vice versa. So you rely on Egypt, again, as a partner in this regard, and France to Egypt. And among the whole world, France, Germany, play a very special role in the depth of its relationship with Egypt. And that's a point to be very well emphasized.
That is the French-Egyptian historical and through the years relations. When we speak about the cooperation and partnership, because we're speaking about Egypt and France, we're speaking about 2 important countries who realize how things and matters are getting complicated in the whole region, and hence this is reflecting on the developments. So how do you view that?
Well, I would say definitely that France in its, or throughout its history, has always been a country that show higher and better understanding of the nature of the Arab world and the nature of Egypt in particular. The demography of France itself helps this understanding take place. Yes, I will admit, we will all admit that there has been ups and downs in this part with respect to Islamophobia and things like that happened like that. But again, maybe that's another test for how sound and strong this relationship, that it really survives that in a good and wise way. Let's not forget the visit of our Sheikh of Azhar to France. I'm trying to use examples here to show how close Egypt is keen to be with France and how close France is keen to be with Egypt. And I will say once more, Egypt and France are partners with the Arab world and within Africa. So that's what gives this partnership a very special dimension as such.
We've seen yesterday upon his arrival, the President was keen to meet with Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, the President of the Transitional Sovereign Council, and afterwards, right afterwards, with the Dassault company, the CEO, the executive CEO of the company, and that shows how Egypt is taking that very much into considerations, boosting relations. If we get back to the conference itself, and we were speaking about 5 points that Egypt has put for Sudan to be able to, or to pinpoint our fingers on the what really Sudan's need. But the president has been keen to insist on the issue of peace and stability in Sudan. And the situation in Sudan is complicated because it has multifaceted issue. The complication also comes from the situation or the instability, particularly in the area of
Darfur, you mean, or other?
Yes, this is from one side. The other is now the borders with Ethiopia. Yes. So how do you view that, and how do the world or the international community need to interfere in order to easy or make the situation much, or de-escalate the tension in Sudan?
Okay. To give the viewers a better picture of that, there has been several, let's call them revolutions. Of course, the use of this expression one has to be very careful about, because several of them happened in Sudan. The last one was in December 2018, and as a result of that, to directly address your question, there were multiple forces. Many of them are armed ones, were on the political stage. And that's what made the transitional stage or years or quite complicated. Thanks God, this has been milded down a little bit with some kind of balances, with some kind of give and take and so on. So it became a little bit more stable when it comes to that. The political situation in Sudan now, I wouldn't call it as critical, but I would call it as one that needs to be close follow-up and strong partnership, and to keep the political stage or situation stable. I go back to your or start or beginning of your introduction. The political file has to be put ahead, because the Sudanese people, and I heard today, maybe you have heard that too, the young generation Sudanese were talking today, they were talking about corruption, they were talking about there were so many loans and so many debts without seeing or feeling any of that benefit coming to their country. And that could ignite a situation not only in Sudan, but in any country of similar nature. And therefore, the world would not want to see, genuinely do not want to see that, because the repercussions of that is that Africa, that has 54 countries, can have similar kind or similar skills. Let's not forget that in our region, when they say the Arab Spring, it starts here and then goes here and goes there. Imagine, and we don't want to imagine this too much, because if this happens in Sudan, and all the similar, even small scale economies that will suffer like that or are suffering,